we need to talk about what I'm calling the freedom trap.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at almost any vertical of self-improvement right now, I mean, whether it's spiritual awakening, financial independence, leadership training, you name it, the promised land is always the same thing.
Options.
Options, exactly. We want FU money. We want spiritual liberation. We want to escape the 9 to 5. We want to be the person who can do whatever they want, whenever they want.
We want the ability to say no to everything. That's the dream, isn't it? Total autonomy.
Right. But we've got a source on the desk today. It's excerpt 14 from a text called The Gravity of Clarity that says this entire pursuit is, well, a hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
It argues that if you are actually growing, if you're actually becoming enlightened or just more competent, you shouldn't feel freer. You should feel heavier.
It is a brutal thesis. It essentially says that competence and clarity don't give you options. They strip them away. Yeah, they strip them away until only the necessary action remains. The source argues that the version of freedom we're all chasing, that desire to escape obligation and consequence, is a modern fantasy.
And a dangerous one at that.
Yeah.
So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why true enlightenment doesn't liberate you from reality, but binds you to it. And I have to be honest, when I first read this, I felt a little defensive.
Of course.
Because who doesn't want to be unburdened? Who doesn't want to just float on a cloud?
Everyone wants that. But the source is asking us to look at the cost of that floating. If you're floating, you aren't touching the ground. You aren't engaging with what's real.
Right.
And this text makes a compelling case that what we call freedom is actually just a form of dissociation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I'm going to sign up for a life of heaviness, I need to understand what I'm buying. The text starts by defining this modern fantasy. How exactly does it describe this myth we're all living in?
Well, it starts by identifying what we're trying to escape from. The source says we view freedom as an exemption. We want to be exempt from constraint, exempt from obligation, and, most importantly, exempt from consequences.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
We want the action without the reaction.
Precisely. We think if we get spiritual enough or rich enough or smart enough, the rules of cause and effect just stop applying to us.
We can transcend the messy stuff.
Yes. But the text contrasts this fantasy with the reality of how we actually live our lives right now. It calls our current state the state of negotiation.
I found this concept of negotiation so painfully relatable. It's like it held a mirror up to my brain.
It's the internal barter system. Right?
Totally. The text says we treat responsibility as a commodity we have to trade against our comfort.
Think about the last time you had a difficult decision to make. Maybe it was a tough conversation you needed to have with a partner or a project at work that was failing. You know what the right thing to do is. You know the duty. But you don't just do it.
No, I sit there and I weigh it. I think, okay, I could have that conversation, but it's going to be awkward and I'm tired.
Yeah.
And maybe if I wait a week, it'll resolve itself. I'm looking for the path of least resistance.
That's the negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
You are filtering reality through your preference. The source puts it this way. Reality is viewed as something to manage.
Oh, that's sharp.
You're constantly asking, how much of this reality do I have to accept, and how much can I dodge to keep my ego comfortable?
And the ego is the shark in the water here. The text argues that modern spirituality, and let's be real, modern marketing caters to this.
Yeah.
It tells the ego, hey, you're special. You shouldn't have to deal with this nonsense. Buy this product, take this course, and you can opt out of the struggle.
It's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. The ego loves the idea of liberation because the ego hates consequences. The ego wants to be the protagonist who wins without sacrificing anything.
Right.
But the source argues that holistic spirituality, the real gritty work of growing up, does the exact opposite. It ends the negotiation.
This is the shift. And this is where I think the text gets really challenging for people.
Yeah.
It says that when you actually get clarity, when you become enlightened, the negotiation doesn't just change, it stops.
It vanishes.
But what does that mean? Does it mean you become a robot?
No, not at all. It means the distance between seeing and doing collapses. The source says, when perception is no longer distorted by pride and shame, reality is seen as it is. And when you see reality as it is, you stop resenting the limits. You stop trying to bargain with them.
So consequences stop being these like abstract threats and become what?
They become felt realities. And this leads to the most technical, but I think most beautiful distinction in the text. The difference between imposed responsibility and revealed responsibility.
Okay, I want to push on this because revealed responsibility sounds a bit mystical. Is this just a fancy way of saying conscience? Or is the source getting at something more mechanical?
is much more mechanical. Think of it like structural engineering. If you're an architect designing a bridge, you don't put a support beam in a specific spot because a rule book says clause 4.2, put beam here,
Right,
or because you feel like it.
right. You put it there because if you don't, the bridge falls down.
Exactly. The gravity of the situation dictates the action. The responsibility to place that beam is revealed by the physics of reality. You aren't choosing to put it there in the sense of picking from a buffet. The reality of the bridge demands it.
So in that moment, the architect doesn't feel oppressed by the laws of physics. They aren't sitting there grumbling, man, I really wish I could build this bridge out of marshmallows, stupid gravity.
Well, a bad architect might, but a master architect, someone with clarity, aligns with the gravity. Misalignment becomes intolerable, and that's the phrase the source uses.
Misalignment becomes intolerable. That's a powerful standard. Not illegal, not immoral, but intolerable.
Imagine you're a surgeon in the ER. A patient comes in pleading out. You don't stop to negotiate. You don't weigh your comfort. You don't think, does saving this life align with my personal brand right now?
No.
The reality of the bleeding patient reveals the responsibility. Your hands move because they have to.
You just grab the scalpel.
You grab the scalpel. In that moment, do you have freedom? Do you have options? No. You have exactly one option. But are you a prisoner?
No. You're effective. You're useful.
You are aligned. And that is what the source claims enlightenment is like all the time. It's not about moral pressure. It's that when you see the world clearly, doing the wrong thing, ignoring the problem, being selfish, lying, it feels impossible.
Impossible.
Not because it's forbidden, but because it's like trying to build a bridge out of marshmallows. You just know it won't work.
So, if I'm understanding this right, the burden the title refers to isn't that someone is scanning over you with a whip. The burden is that you can no longer pretend you don't see the structural flaws.
That's it. You lose the luxury of ignorance. And that brings us to the core conflict. The source outlines freedom versus necessity.
Yeah, let's talk about this because necessity is a heavy word. We love options. We love the buffet. We want to keep our doors open.
We are obsessed with optionality. The source says freedom seeks options. It wants an endless array of choices because that feels like power. But enlightenment sees necessity.
It sees exactly what must be done. This really flips the visual of the enlightened master on its head. I mean, usually we expect a smiling guru, maybe playing a flute, totally carefree, detached from the world.
Right.
But the text describes these figures as serious, grounded, and burdened.
Faithful is the word that really stood out to me. It says they act faithfully responsive to what is required, not what is wanted.
That's a huge distinction. Responsive to what is required versus what is wanted.
Think about the people in history we actually respect. Not the ones who got rich and disappeared to a private island. I'm talking about the people who changed things. Civil rights leaders, innovators who broke through barriers, people who stood up to tyranny. Did they look free in the modern sense?
No. They look like they were carrying the weight of the world. They look like they had no choice but to do what they were doing.
Because they saw the necessity. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't have options. He saw the injustice. He saw the reality. And the path was singular. He was bound to it.
But here's the rub. To the average listener, to me, honestly, that sounds exhausting. We spend our whole lives trying to get more options, more freedom. And now you're telling me the goal is to have one option. That sounds like a trap.
It sounds like a trap if you believe that more choices equals more happiness. But does it? The source discusses the illusion of alternatives. It argues that most of the options we cherish are actually just opportunities to make mistakes.
The freedom to screw up.
The freedom to be confused. Think about a maze. When you are lost in a maze, you have tons of freedom. You can go left, right, turn around, sit down. You have maximum optionality because you don't know where you're going.
Right. Every path looks equally valid because I'm ignorant.
Exactly. But the moment you get a map, the moment you achieve enlightenment about the layout of the maze,
the options collapse. There's only one path out.
You lose your freedom to go down the dead ends. You lose the option to turn left into a wall. So in a sense, your world has narrowed, but it has narrowed to the truth. Would you rather have the freedom of being lost or the burden of knowing the way?
When you put it that way, I want the map. But I think we cling to the freedom to be lost because it feels safer. If I don't know the right path, I'm not responsible for taking it.
Bingo. That is the crux of it. Ignorance is a shield. If I don't see that my spending habits are destroying my future, I can keep buying stuff and feel good. If I don't see that my communication style is hurting my partner, I can keep blaming them.
But the text says, once you see clearly, you cannot pretend not to see.
And once you know what is required, you cannot unknow it. That is the haunting quality of clarity. It's a one-way door.
You cannot unknow it. That's the burden. It reminds me of, have you ever learned something about how a sausage is made or how a specific industry works and suddenly you can't enjoy it anymore?
Or even something positive. Once you learn how to read music, you can't listen to a symphony and just hear noise anymore. You hear the structure. You hear the missed notes. You hear the genius. You are compelled to hear it accurately. You can't turn it off.
So what does this all mean for us on a Tuesday morning? We aren't all trying to be historical figures or master architects. We're just trying to get through the week. Why should the listener care about trading their freedom for this kind of exactness?
Because the modern fantasy of freedom is making us miserable. We are drowning in choices, drowning in negotiation. We spend so much energy trying to manage our reality, trying to decide if we should do the hard thing, when we should do it, how we can do it with the least amount of work possible.
The paralysis of analysis?
It's exhausting. The source suggests that enlightenment doesn't make life easier, it makes it exact. And there is a tremendous peace in exactness.
Exactness. That's such a sharp word.
It means you stop wasting energy on the what-ifs. You stop wasting energy on the should I. You just do. Life becomes immediate. You see the dirty dish, you wash it. You see the difficult email, you write it. You see the injustice, you speak up.
You stop leaking energy into the negotiation.
Right. And while that feels heavier because you are carrying more responsibility, it's actually lighter because you aren't carrying the drag of resistance. You aren't fighting reality anymore.
It connects back to that idea of holistic spirituality at the end of the text. It says it dissolves the ego that wanted to escape.
And produces responsibility to reality itself. That is the shift from me-centric to reality-centric. You stop asking, what do I get out of this? And you start asking, what does this situation require of me?
That's a terrifying question to ask if you aren't ready for the answer. What did this situation require of me?
It is, because the answer might be quit your job. The answer might be apologize. The answer might be work harder than you've ever worked. And you can't say no because you see it.
You can't unring the bell. You know, this explains why so many people avoid looking too closely at their lives. We intuitively know that if we look, we'll find work to do.
We know that clarity is a summons. It summons us to act. So we keep the lights dim, we keep the music loud, we keep the freedom of the fog.
But the argument here is that the fog isn't freedom, it's just sleep.
It's sleepwalking. And the burden of seeing is just the sensation of waking up.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We started by looking for freedom, that desire to break chains and run wild. But through this text, we've found that true clarity actually leads to a bind.
We move from the idea of negotiating with reality, trying to get the best deal for our comfort, to the idea of being bound to reality by the physics of the situation.
And realizing that this binding isn't a punishment. It's the mechanics of competence. It's the difference between the person who guesses and the person who knows.
Exactly.
The person who knows has fewer choices, but they are the only one who can actually build the bridge.
Well said. While it sounds heavy, and the text uses words like gravity and necessity, it is ultimately the only way to stop managing reality and start actually living in it.
And that ends the war between what you want and what is.
That's the real peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace of alignment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a thought to carry with you. We've talked about how we all claim to want enlightenment or clarity or truth. We say we want to see things as they really are.
But if true clarity means having fewer options because the right path becomes obvious, ask yourself this. Are you actually looking for enlightenment, or are you just looking for an escape?
A heavy question for a heavy topic. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.